In this video, we'll go through a technique to keep your Touch Designer project files smaller when using RayTK. The main RayTK toolkit tox is big. It's nearly 10 megabytes. And a lot of that is from thumbnail images that are used in the palette, but there are also just a lot of things in there with over 350 operators and a bunch of other stuff. When you drop all of that into a Touch Designer project, the default is for all of that to be embedded in your project file. That means that a project that could otherwise be a few kilobytes ends up being over 10 meg. If you're fine with that, then no need to change anything. But if you want to have smaller files, you can tell Touch Designer not to embed it in the file. If you want to have smaller files, you can tell Touch Designer not to embed it all in the file. The first step is to download the toolkit tox from the GitHub releases page. So on the releases page, you go down here, grab this tox file. When you do that, it's important to come up with a good place to save it. So how we're going to do that is by going into Touch Designer. We're going to open the Touch Designer palette using the button in the top corner. Then you go down to where it says My Components. You right-click that and you choose Browse Folder. This will open up whatever folder Touch Designer is using for your own custom components that you want to include in the palette. So this is where you download and save the RayTK tox file. Then you go back into Touch Designer, right-click where it says My Components, and then choose Refresh Folder. When that's done, RayTK will now show up in the palette when you have the My Components category selected. From there, the next step is to bring RayTK into the project. I always do that at the root of the project, so outside of project 1, and I do that because it can be visually confusing when the toolkit tox is in the same level as all the components that you're using from it. It will show these data connection lines to every single operator. Personally, I find that to be kind of confusing, so I stick it at the root outside of project 1 instead. So wherever you decide to put it, take the RayTK component from the palette, drag it into your project file. This will take a second to load because, again, it's pretty big. But when that's finished, when you drag things in from the palette by default, it doesn't attach where that file came from. So to get around that, you can go to the RayTK component, go to the common parameter page, and then expand this external tox path parameter. Switch over to expression mode, clicking the blue rectangle there. And then for the expression, delete what's there and type in app.user palette folder plus single quote and then a slash and RayTK -0.43 or whatever version you're using .tox and then another single quote. So you want that to match the name of the file. Using this expression means that if you go onto a different computer and you open the same file, it will be able to find it in whatever folder is being used for that on the other computer. The next step is to switch on this Enable External Tox setting. So this tells it when it starts up to load from that file. And then the last step here is to switch off the Save Backup of External setting. So this means that it doesn't save a whole copy of that entire tox in the project file. And when you open up the project file, it will look for that file and load it if it's available. So what happens if that file isn't there, though? Like if you were to pass off this project file to somebody else, they open it on a different computer, and that file isn't there. That's actually okay. Any of the operators that you created with RayTK are going to continue working just as they would. The only things that you miss are that you can't use the RayTK palette to create new operators, and you can't use the RayTK editor tools menu with the Alt-Shift-R shortcut. But if you want either of those things, you can drag that file into your components folder and then kind of reload it by clicking that reload button there on the parameters, and it should pull that up. Anyways, once you do that, if you save this file, it's going to be really tiny because it doesn't have to include a whole copy of the entire toolkit in it. I hope that's useful. Let me know in the comments if this is a technique that you use or if there are other techniques that you want to hear about.